Hello, my friends, hello, and welcome once again to Stately Vaughan Manor, where Roger and I have returned for my weekly reading report. It's time for my weekly reading report, and I discovered this past week that I'm really terrible at keeping a schedule. So, this reading report is a few days late. This past week it's been busy. I've been busy. Things have been going on. Little Rhonda had to go back to the vet and has surgery tomorrow. Lots of things going on. She should be fine, but lots of things. So this is a late weekly reading report. But I did read some stuff, so let's talk about that stuff that I read. So, since the last time I did one of these, whenever that was, so on the 500 book challenge, the challenge where I am reading 500 books that I own before I'll buy any new ones, I am at book number 213. That is, I finished 213. And that would be this magnificent book, A Rendezvous in Averoigne. I think that's how you pronounce this word. Averoigne? Averoigne? People have told me different things. So, since I don't speak French, just read that title. It's by Clark Ashton Smith, and this book is wonderful. So Clark Ashton Smith, one of the big three of Weird Tales, along with H.P. Lovecraft and Robert E. Howard. Clark Ashton Smith was a very popular writer in Weird Tales. And in his own way, he is every bit as good as both H.P. Lovecraft and Robert E. Howard. He was very different. He was first and foremost a poet, and you can tell just in his use of language in his stories. His description, his vivid description, it's one of his great strengths. I mean, he could put you in a story in a fantastic, weird fantasy environment. He could put you into that environment like nobody else could, really. He was a master at that. And then once you get into that fantasy world, terrifying things happen. So this is a book published by Arkham House. This is actually the second edition of this book, if not the third. This particular edition was published in 2003, and I think I did get it in 2003 or maybe 2004. It's been a long time, and I read it shortly after I got it, but, it's been a while since then. So I read this again because I really wanted to read something Clark Ashton Smith. And this is a kind of best of volume, sort of. It does have some of his best stories. He just wrote so many stories, and so many of them were great. Beautifully told, these stories. Like I said, he takes you and he puts you exactly where he wants to put you in his stories. Also, I have to say that if you are a character in a Clark Ashton Smith story, you are going to have a really bad end. Probably. You are out of luck if you're a character in a Clark Ashton Smith story, because he was the master of horrific fates and deadly dooms. If you're a character in an H.P. Lovecraft story, you're getting off easy compared to this guy, because you will probably have a very horrific, terrible end if you're in a Clark Ashton Smith story. Not always. Like, there was at least one character in here that actually had kind of a happy ending. But most of the characters in this book, oh man, bad things happen. Just horrific things and disturbing things. Exactly what you want, from a weird horror story. But yeah, some grim stuff happens in this book. I so highly recommend Clark Ashton Smith. Such a unique talent. As Ray Bradbury says in his introduction to this volume, his talent was lonely. He is not as appreciated as he should be. There has been one classic volume of Clark Ashton Smith. There was a Penguin edition, which I talked about years ago, which is pretty good, edited by S.T. Joshi, of course. But he should be better known. I mean, I think he should be at least as famous as Robert E. Howard and H.P. Lovecraft. It's just, I think the types of stories that he wrote didn't have that kind of appeal, you know. He didn't create any major character like Robert E. Howard did with Conan. His stories, while horrific, weren't quite as accessible as H.P. Lovecraft's in a way. H.P. Lovecraft, who created his own dark mythology. Clark Ashton Smith did too, but it never could match the Cthulhu mythos in popularity. Although he did write some stories that could be considered mythos stories. Certainly, H.P. Lovecraft mentioned Clark Ashton Smith's worlds in his stories. So they were playing around in the same universe, actually. It's great stuff. I mean, it's wonderful. If you are a fan of H.P. Lovecraft, definitely you need to check out Clark Ashton Smith. I mean, he's magnificent. So there was that. I read this, and I was very, very happy with it. Where's that next book I'm going to read? Here it is. Hold on. It's right over here. I'm going to go off camera and retrieve this, because it is ambuary. Okay, it's ambuary, which means it's the time when you read Roger Zelazny. So last year, I decided I would read all of I would read the complete Chronicles of Amber. I decided I would read the complete Chronicles of Amber in January last year, called it ambuary, and I didn't read all of the books. I read 8 of them. I still have 2 books to read. So ambuary has returned, and Grammaticus on his great channel has actually made a real event out of this, where you read Roger Zelazny books in January. And, you know, that's about as great an event as you can have, I think. So check out Grammaticus' channel. Grammaticus is awesome. But yeah, so I've got the next book to read, which is Night of Shadows. I've got Night of Shadows, and then after that, I've got Prince of Chaos after that. So yeah, the next book I'm going to be reading is Night of Shadows. Before that, though, I've got to catch up on my DC Comics reading, because that has suffered the past couple weeks. I did finish this volume of the Fantastic Four. This is the Epic Collection for the Fantastic Four, Counter-Earth Must Die, Volume 10 in the Fantastic Four Epic Collections. I'm reading every issue of the Fantastic Four from the first run of the Fantastic Four, which ran from 1961? Was it 61 or 62? Now I'm forgetting. But it ran from then to 1996. And then it was canceled and then brought right back. But the first run, I'm reading every issue, and I am in 1978. I finished this book. Unfortunately, it doesn't count for the 500 book challenge because I got it after the challenge began. It's Epic Collections and DC Finest volumes are exempt from the challenge. I get frequent questions about this. These are exempt. But, you know, if I read one and it's a book I didn't buy before the challenge started, that means it doesn't count for the challenge. And unfortunately, I'm in a period of the Fantastic Four where there are no Epic Collections that cover the stories that I'm reading. And so I have to read them on my Magic tablet. I'm on issue 196. 196. So still in the late 70s. The Fantastic Four have temporarily broken up, and we're having little solo adventures with different Fantastic Four people. And at this point, Marv Wolfman is on the book. We've had a lot of different writers come and go. We've had Len Wein, we've had Roy Thomas, and now we've got Marv Wolfman and Keith Pollard, who is an artist I like a lot, who drew a lot of issues of Thor that I enjoyed last year when I was reading every issue of Thor from the first run of Thor. Keith Pollard drew a lot of excellent Thor stories. Really like Keith Pollard. Unfortunately, he didn't stick around Marvel Comics. He did leave to become a computer programmer because, you know, he could make more money doing less work. Imagine that. But it was kind of a loss because Pollard's pretty damn good. So I'm at that period in the Fantastic Four. So that's where I'm at on that. Also, of course, I am reading Varney the Vampire. It's been a little slow. We've had a long build-up to this event in Varney the Vampire. And I have to say, the event pretty much makes up for the boring build-up. The event was the wedding of Varney the Vampire. What should have been the social event of the millennium was ruined by my arch nemesis, Admiral Bell, and the wretched Bannerworths. The Bannerworth family. What did I ever do to them? Well, I suppose I did drive them out of house and home, and there was that time I broke into Flora's chamber and sucked her blood, and then later lied about it and said I didn't. And I did steal a fortune from the Bannerworths. That's true. These are all minor inconveniences, though, and I needed that money more than they did. Now, it is also true that at the time of my wedding, I was impersonating a baron. You know, it's probably always best when you get married to pretend you're someone else. You know, just in case things go wrong. Well, thanks to the Admiral, things went wrong rather quickly. I will give you all the tragic details. They are recorded here in the greatest work of world literature ever, Varney the Vampire, or The Feast of Blood. Let me set the scene. It is the wedding of the Baron. Thousands of people are there. Billions of people are there at the wedding. When tragedy struck, the bride had emerged from her chamber in her bridal gown. But the Baron was late. Where was the Baron? Everyone wanted to know. It was astonishing that the bridegroom should be late. And the audience who were present began to be indignant at such a fact, and whispered together concerning it, in language not very flattering to the Baron, who, had he heard it, would have found that he must mind what he was about, or his rapidly acquired popularity would soon be at a discount. It was, rather quickly as it turned out. Minute after minute thus passed, and Mrs. Williams, who was attired in a richly flowing garment of white silk, embroidered with flowers, began to be in a most particular fidget. That was the mother-in-law. Ugh. Where could be the Baron? Good God! Where is the Baron? And someone or two said, Damn the Baron! When, suddenly, the door at which the bride had entered was again flung open. Two servants in rich liveries made their appearance, one standing on each side of it. Then there was heard approaching a slow and measured footstep, and presently, attired in a court suit of rich velvet, the Baron Stahlmeyer of Salzburg appeared in the hall, and marched up to the table. He had just time to execute half a bow to the assembled multitude, when Admiral Bell called out in a voice that awakened every echo in the place, It's Varney the Vampire, by God! Yes, it was Varney, the bold, reckless, audacious Varney, who had thus come out in a new character, and, with vast pecuniary resources, acquired heaven knows how or where, was seeking to ally himself to one so young and beautiful as Helen Williams. We do absolutely and positively despair of giving an adequate idea to the reader of the scene that followed. Ladies shrieked, the bride fainted, Mrs. Williams went into strong hysterics and kicked everybody, Jack Pringle shouted until he was hoarse, while Varney turned and made a dash to escape through the door at which he had just entered. I cannot bear to go on. Needless to say, a fabulous wedding was ruined by Admiral Bell and the Bannerworths. Love, struck down by jealousy. What can I say? Well, I guess I'll return you to your regularly scheduled stupid program. Yeah, things really went to hell at that wedding. Anyway, there you go, reading Varney the Vampire, and it's got better there at the wedding. So I guess that's all I have to say for this week. I will catch you next time.